Architect Divya Chakravarti. She completed her undergraduate studies from SRM University and she went on to pursue her master's in historic preservation and urbanism and study of the built environment from the University of California, Los Angeles. She went on to work for the Department of Planning and Preservation for the city of Pasadena, California. She also did a brief stint of work for Historic Scotland, Edinburgh, UK. She had also worked on conservation projects like Kalsa Mahal, Gokhale Hall in Chennai, and Marimalappa Educational Trust in Mysore. She is currently working as a director of Samrakshan Heritage Consultancy. She is also a co-founder of the Artisan Reprisal of Traditional Materials, Method and Technology. She goes on to conduct workshops to revive traditional and lost methods of construction.
Welcome to the UGC lecture series for Bachelors of Architecture. The subject we are discussing is environmental science. The topic we are delving into is environmental pollution. In this lecture, we will be looking into marine pollution, the main causes being oil pollution and garbage pollution, noise pollution, cause and effect, thermal pollution. If you look at oil pollution, the discharge of oily mixtures in the sea is basically prohibited. So, any kind of ships, especially fishing trolleys, or it could be oil tankers or any other commodity ships that commute across seas and oceans, they all have a tendency to discharge oil because of the machinery that is run on the ship, and this discharge is permitted only to a certain level. Discharge of any oily mixtures allowed while in transit, provided these shipping vessels have an operation, some kind of filtering or separating equipment that ensures that the oil content is less than 15 parts of oil to 1 part of water, which is basically 15 ppm. So, for nearly 15 parts of oil to 1 million parts of water is the ratio that is permitted. All fishing vessels over 400 tons, it is compulsory that they have this kind of equipment placed, and they also need to meet other standards which is set by the International Maritime Organization. We need to also reduce the potential of any kind of oil discharge. So, any leakage of fuel oil, lubricating oil, cooling water should be dealt with as soon as it is detected. And in case any kind of leakage is there should be some kind of an alarm system that sounds, so we are aware of any such leakage that is occurring. A drip tray should be fitted out under all engines with a kind of suitable drainage mechanism to a holding tank or a drum which can be disposed later when the ship is ashore. Ensuring the engine rooms and other machinery spaces are fitted with some plumbing so that any leakage is collected in the sump instead of entering the water body. Ensure propeller shaft seal is in good working order. High efficiency bypass oil filters can be installed that extend the life of the engine oil as well as decrease the frequent oil changes. Moving on to garbage pollution, obviously when ships are in commute through many months and especially fishing trolleys, there is going to be certain kind of garbage that is getting disposed, but it cannot be disposed mid-sea wherever they want. There has to be a suitable procedure, they has to be collected in a hold and then released. So, the main items which usually cause problem and are completely prohibited are trawl and fishing nets. They tend to suffocate animals, the aquatic animals, and catch onto the fins of these huge fish or sometimes even small fish, killing them literally. Synthetic rope, plastic sheeting, 6-pack holders which is basically made of aluminum or plastic to hold drinks, fiberglass, strapping bands, plastic ice bags, bait gaskets, paints, electrical or electronic equipment, disposable eating utensils. That is another huge hazard, especially let it be styrofoam, plastic, all of that is very dangerous to aquatic life. And floats which are used in rescue missions. Accidental loss or discharge of fishing gear. Lost fishing gear may harm the marine environment or create even navigational hazards, which will further create maritime and other maritime accidents may be triggered because of these navigational hazards. Usually sometimes these fishing nets create like this illusion on the face of the water, and the ship sometimes the propellers could get caught in it, and which will stop and cause leakages of oil again, which will harm the marine environment. Many marine animals, including certain fish species like whales and all, they die as a result of becoming entangled in or even ingesting or eating these plastic materials, netting and all of these kind of garbage. Plastics which shatter into smaller fragments are also mistaken for food, and these are ingested accidentally and they cut the internal organs of the fish. Garbage such as rope and plastic material can also get caught in propeller shafts as well as block water intake, causing major damage and expensive repairs as well. Garbage waste management on board. Every fishing vessel of 100 gross tonnage and above, and every fishing vessel certified to carry 15 or more people is now required to carry a garbage management plan. The garbage management plan contains the procedures, how you are going to go about collect the garbage, store it, process it, and where finally and how finally is it going to be disposed. So, all of this is encompasses in the garbage plan, and without having a suitable plan and action, they cannot set off sail. So, this includes appropriate garbage, organic garbage, as well as handling certain equipment such as storage containers, compactors or incinerators. Moving on to industries, we need to improve sewage disposal facilities and disposal systems, marine monitoring and regulations. We need to treat waste, the oils and other chemical discharge before discharging into the sea, effective solid waste disposal and treatment. We need to refrain from construction of illegal seaside ports or harbors. What can the government do in this kind of context? First thing is obviously creating awareness, and we need to provide education to general public as well as the industries and the workers in these industries. Port management authorities can examine ships and portside factories for any kind of harmful effluents or emissions. We need to prevent illegal sand mining and theft along the coastal reefs. So, what happens when the sand keeps getting smuggled is the shore gets eroded, it affects marine environment, marine life as well as the stability of the coast as well. Quick action force to prevent the spread of oil slicks and ocean fires, setting aside funds for preventing marine conservation, proper maintenance of all beaches. Now, simultaneously, when the government is doing the legislative portion of it, what is the role of the scientific community? They need to go about with the cultivation of marine bacterial plants that enhance degradation of organic pollutants, protection and enhancement of coral reefs, neutralization of acidic or basic emissions to maintain the pH of the water, because if the pH of the water goes off balance, it is going to affect marine life encompassing plants as well as animals, computer modeling of dispersion of pollutants, remote sensing of marine pollution, analytical quality control services for marine pollution monitoring. We need to have a risk assessment and management of marine pollution. So, we need to be aware where are the possible ways that the water body is getting polluted, how it can be curbed, and at the second we realize that it is getting polluted, we should nip it at the bud rather than let it bloom and grow. Now, moving on to noise pollution, cause and effect. So, noise pollution is a derivative of basic sound. Sound is nothing but a vibration that propagates as a mechanical wave of pressure and displacement through some sort of medium, usually air or water. Sound refers to only those vibrations with frequencies that are within the range of hearing for humans. Now, the difference to sound and noise. Noise is basically any kind of unwanted sound. It is measured in decibel units. So, anything pleasing and within the range of human hearing is considered sound, and anything beyond this range causing some kind of discomfort to humans is referred to as noise. Characteristics of noise: sound pressure, frequency, duration, time of the day, location, intermittency. So, all of these factors decide when it is noise. Now, when someone is driving in the middle of the road and someone honks, that can be considered noise, but it is quintessential noise. You cannot get away with honking of a horn. At the same time, at 4 a.m. when they are deep asleep, if the same horn is blared around their ears, that is also noise, but that is not required and it is unnecessary. So, when it becomes to the next category, that is what decides the characteristics of noise. So, all of these elements decide what kind of noise it is, when, where and how frequent these noises occur. The different kinds of noise that exist: continuous, variable or intermittent, impulse or impact. These are the kinds of noise which affect analysis now. So, you have chemical noise as well as instrumental noise. If you see, this is variable noise. You have the simple example of a factory sometimes. Continuous noise, similarly in a factory, when you have particular machinery chugging out, say it runs for 10 hours, 12 hours and the workers are made to wear earmuffs to prevent their hearing from getting destroyed. And impulse noise is like the shot of a gun. It needn't be continuous, but when it occurs, it's quite strong and it is piercing. Instrumental noise, you have thermal noise, flicker noise, shot noise and environmental noise. Moving on to noise pollution. Noise pollution refers to a type of energy pollution in which distracting, irritating or damaging sounds are freely audible. In this type of pollution, contaminants are not physical particles, but waves which interfere with naturally occurring waves or a similar type in the same environment. Noise pollution is considered very subjective, because for some people some kind of music itself could be noise, versus some people will enjoy it as music. So, noise pollution as such has two different degrees. One is the kind where it is completely subjective and one where there is recorded evidence of it causing a lot of harm. Sources of noise pollution: household sources. Usually household sources are the subjective noises, like grinder running, like a mixer running, television blaring, someone is not able to hear, the volume is at a much higher level. All of these are manageable sources of pollution. Social events, again it occurs not continuously but now and then. Commercial and industrial activities, this is where we need to be careful. It could have a threshold which may cross and cause irreversible damage. Transportation, again like I just mentioned, it could be avoided, but it is quintessential at the same time. So, the time and the areas where transportation noise can be regulated, like hospitals and schools, it can be curbed. So, areas like that it can be reduced, but cannot be avoided completely. So, if you look at household sources, the typical ones that you see are food mixers, grinders, washing machine, dryers, air conditioners, televisions, loudspeakers and even pet animals. So, these are usual sources within households. Social events encompass places of worship, discos and other gigs, parties, markets where people sell goods with loudspeakers. So, when these events are rather obviously not often, they are termed as nuisance rather than noise pollution. So, this is the bearable context. Commercial and industrial activities, this could be printing presses, manufacturing industries and construction sites. Sources of construction noise: pneumatic hammers, air compressors, bulldozers, loaders, dump trucks and pavement breakers. Sources of industry noise, you have fans, motors, compressors which are mounted outside. These interior noise sources have significant impacts on the workers, among whom noise induced hearing loss is unfortunately considered common and an occupational hazard. Not all of them are comfortable wearing earmuffs, and sometimes earmuffs do not help all decibels of noise. In transportation, we have road traffic noise, aircraft noise and noise from railroads, the typical transportations that we use. Causes of noise pollution are typically poor urban planning, sounds from motor vehicles, sounds from musical instruments amplified, car alarms, office equipment, factory machinery, construction work, barking animals, appliances, audio instruments, loudspeakers and noise created by people themselves. Effects of noise pollution: Obviously, we need to again consider the environment. So, effects on environment, which includes vegetation and property, on animals and humans as well. Effects on human, if you look at it, hearing impairment, interference with spoken communication, decrease in efficiency of work because we are distracted, lack of concentration, fatigue, sleep disturbances, cardiovascular disturbances. Disturbance in mental health, impaired task performance, negative social behavior and annoyance reactions, abortion of fetuses, abnormal fetuses, temporary or permanent deafness. Now, the typical sound level for human response, you can see the level we are looking at over here, about 140 to 130 decibels. The typical source is jet planes and rock music even sometimes. It can cause traumatic injury and irreversible damage and is considered very painful. At the other extreme, you have rustling of leaves, studio, all of those decibels is within 10 to 20 decibels, very quiet. So, we have a mid range of about 70 to 80 decibels, which is truck vacuum cleaners, and they are considered very loud. Damage can happen if they are going to be exposed for a long time continuously only. So, below 70 decibels is considered like a threshold. Below 70 is completely safe, and above 70 we need to be a little careful with respect to duration of exposure and the type of exposure. Now, damage risk criteria for hearing loss. This is Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So, maximum allowable hours per day. So, if the decibel level they are exposed to is 90, only 8 hours. This applies basically to industry workers, factory workers, and even people who constantly work like traffic policemen who are surrounded by constant noise. And if you work at a level where 115 decibels is created, you can only work for 0.25 hours in a day. So, you need to take this strictly into consideration to avoid permanent damage to our hearing organs. Now, Indian standards for ambient noise levels, a silent zone daytime is about 50, night is 45 decibels. Silent zone is usually up to 100 meters around hospitals, schools and courts. These zones are declared by competent authorities. Use of vehicle horns, loudspeakers and bursting of crackers is completely banned in these zones, irrespective of let it be a festival time or one particular time. It's banned throughout the year, throughout the day and night. Now, if you move on to industrial area, daytime they allow about 75 decibels and night 65. Commercial area, daytime is 65 decibels and night time is 55, and residential area, daytime is 55 decibels permitted and night time is 45. Now, typical diseases which are caused by noise pollution: high blood pressure, heart attack, cancer, asthma, coughing and wheezing, deafness, annoyance, stress, anxiety, reduced lung development, bronchitis, insomnia and arteriosclerosis. These are the typical organs that get hit. Your brain and the lungs and the heart take the major hit. You have high blood pressure, arteriosclerosis, heart attacks, cancer, asthma, stroke, reduced lung development. All of these are the typical effects. Now, moving on to effects on animals. It basically damages their nervous system. It alters the prey and predator detection because their hearing senses only warns them that a predator is on the prowl. If their hearing senses are tremendously affected, then they can be captured and eaten easily. It creates problems in navigation. They become dangerous and start attacking because they are on the defense. They raises their metabolism, reduction of usable habitat, death of certain species, and that again causes a lot of imbalance to the food chain, genetic and evolutionary problems. It causes hormone imbalance, chronic stress, panic and escape behavior, abandonment of offspring, injury, loudness of interspecies communication. Because once they become deaf, they will start talking louder amongst each other and that will create noise again. So, all of this is repercussions of having the effect of noise pollution on animals. Moving on to the effect of environment, breakage of earth barrier, poor quality of crops, damages buildings, bridges and monuments, weakens the edifice of the building. How do we go about controlling noise pollution? First is control it very much at the source, then you have an option of controlling it in the transmission path, and finally when you know that the noise is going to be there, you have to use proper protective equipment. This particularly applies to people who are working in such environment like traffic workers as well as factory workers. Controlling its source, we need to reduce the noise levels from domestic sectors, maintenance of automobiles, use of economic instruments, control over vibrations, low speaking voice, prohibition on usage of loudspeakers, selection of machinery, maintenance of machines. Control in the transmission path, installation of barriers, installation of panels and enclosures, green belt development. Naturally, plants are the best absorbers of sound, and if you have a number of houses on the main road, having tall trees helps reduce not only noise pollution but also air pollution as well. Using protecting equipment, job rotation, like we just saw, the number of hours that are permitted, that has to be strictly adhered to. You cannot just exceed the number of hours. So, you need to ensure there is a shift system and that is strictly followed. Exposure reduction, hearing protection and protection at the receiver's end. Similar noise controlling techniques occur as sound insulation, sound absorption, vibration damping, vibration isolation, urban planning. So, zones can be made such that there is a silent zone, industrial zone and residential zone. All of these are segregated properly and any overlap that occurs does not cause any health issues. Public education and awareness. Moving on, how you go about controlling noise pollution at the receiver's end. For people working in noisy areas, ear protection aids like plugs, muffs, noise helmets, headphones should be provided as it's an occupational exposure. At the source, this is only possible if working method is improved. We have to design new machines to replace noisy ones. Machinery, looking at cost, should not be just left without any maintenance. They have to be constantly oiled, maintained and repaired and serviced to ensure they are working at the best optimum level. Proper lubrication and better maintenance of machines. Installing noisy machines with sound absorbing materials. Using silencer to control noise from automobiles, etc. How can zoning help? Increase distance between source and receiver by zoning of noisy industrial areas like bus stands, railway stations away from the silent zones near residential areas, educational institutions and hospitals. Sound insulation. Sound insulations can be done by constructing windows with more than one pane of glass and filling the gap with sound absorbing material. Acoustic tiles, perforated plywood can be fixed on the walls, ceilings and floors to reduce noise. What is the strategy about going about controlling noise? Planting bushes and trees in and around sound generating sources is an effective solution. Regularly servicing and tuning automobiles. Buildings can be designed with suitable noise absorbing material for walls, windows and ceilings. Workers should be provided with equipment such as earplugs and muffs for hearing protection. Similar to automobiles, lubrication of machinery and servicing should be done to minimize noise generation. Soundproof doors and windows can be installed to block unwanted noise from the outside. Regulations should be imposed to restrict the use of playing loudspeakers in crowded areas and public spaces. Factories and industries should be located far away from residential areas. Community development of urban management should be done with long-term planning along with an aim to reduce noise pollution, and if at all we know that it's going to be there, how do we go about reducing the exposure at the receiving end? Social awareness programs should be taken up to educate the public about the causes and effects of noise pollution. Like besides planting of trees, there has to be strict legislative measures that needs to be enforced to control the nuisance of noise pollution. So, some of these legislative measures are minimum use of loudspeakers near silent zones, banning pressure horns in all automobiles, framing a separate noise pollution act. These are the typical standards in the CPCB standards of noise level. In a rural area, 25 to 35, suburban is about 30 to 40 decibels, residential within an urban area is up to 45, urban, which covers both residential as well as business, is up to 50, city and industrial has a range between 50 and 60 decibels. The main problem with noise pollution is it's not given the same importance as that as air or other kinds of environmental pollution. It is only now when it's reached a level where we are not able to recognize it, we don't have adequate awareness with respect to noise pollution. So first, besides having controlling measures, there has to be certain awareness programs that are conducted at schools and educational institutions, factories where these workers are employed. They should be made aware that yes, they are working in a noise pollution area, they have to take certain precautions. If not, these are the risks of working in such a place. Most of them are laborers who do not realize the risks of working in such a noisy place. It causes a series of health issues, environmental issues, which will transcend to other realms within the ecological cycle eventually. So noise pollution has to be taken more seriously at a legislative level to create more strict laws. It has to be taken more seriously at an awareness level, as well as to create proper controlling measures to ensure that noise pollution does not exceed the existing standards that have been mentioned by different authorities across the globe. To go about protecting our healthy life, we have to recognize that noise pollution is first a very crucial type of pollution that is affecting not only humans but also animals and the environment. We need to come up with an enforceable law on noise pollution in each state and overall in the country. At the end of this lecture, we have looked into marine pollution, the main causes being oil pollution and garbage pollution, noise pollution, the cause and effect of it, measures to control noise pollution. At the end of this lecture, we should be able to answer the following questions. What are the main concerns with respect to oil pollution? How can garbage pollution and water bodies be reduced? What is noise pollution? Discuss the cause and effect of noise pollution. That brings us to the end of this lecture. Thank you.